Flinders Ranges is an iconic adventure riding bucket list location.
How's that for a view?
But there's a little planning you need to consider if you want to head out there. It's not exactly just around the corner, and there's a bunch of things we've learnt from our trips out there. So let's do an information dump and help you plan your Flinders Ranges trip. The first thing you need to consider is when. There's a good time, and then there's either freezing or frying your eyeballs. You want to avoid summer and winter, so March to May or August to October are the best months to go.
Nice chilly 4 degrees. Look at that sunrise.
We went through there in August, and it's still a winter gloves and thermals cold in the very low single digits, and then in March, it was bearable, but warm enough to catch you out if you don't keep yourself hydrated. Rain is a big factor in the outback. It will literally bring everything to a standstill for weeks or even months. June has the highest precipitation, but March and April have relatively low rainfall. Hawker is not only the most central place, it's also relatively cheap, with many options and pretty much everything you need, especially a bar. Camping is also a fantastic option for Hawker, but you won't see many tents. Most people are in caravans or campers to keep themselves off the ground. Regarding safety though, there's not much to be concerned about. Most of the rivers are dried up outside of the wet season, so no crocodiles exist. Drop bears though, you never know with those creepy little punks. But I wouldn't be setting myself up in a tent in a dry riverbed. The water doesn't tend to creep up slowly. The other option is stations, and there are some awesome options. Places like Rawnsley Park offer excellent accommodation, and if you're there at the right time, you might even get to sample some of the station's produce paired with some great wines. A lot of the stations also have private tracks to go venturing. One of the great parts about the Flinders Ranges and the Outback is that it is pretty epic just to get there. It's not tough, but it is a long way from any major cities, and there are a few options depending on where you're coming from. Adelaide is closest at 400 kilometres, roughly 5 hours. Melbourne and Sydney are another thing. There are 2 options coming from Sydney via Broken Hill or Mildura. I've done both, and my preference is via Broken Hill because once you pass Dubbo, the roads are relatively easy. I've left Sydney at 3 a.m. and got to Broken Hill at 4:30 p.m. and then it was a shorter day too with only 5 hours to Hawker. The other option is to stay in Cobar, travelling equal parts each day. Brisbane is a bit further, getting you to Cobar in 12 hours. There are a bunch of roads that you have to include in your trip, and these are in no particular order. The Outback Highway is the spine of the Flinders, running from Hawker directly north to Maree before turning into the Birdsville track or the Unadilla track. Bunaroo Gorge is an absolute must-do with Razorback Lookout halfway along before dropping down into the riverbeds. This connects to halfway into Bracken George Road, which is also worth seeing end to end. If time permits, getting off the bike and hiking will give you an even more amazing sights. The others are Parachina Gorge to Blinman, classic gravel twisties. Arkaroola Road, remote, rocky and unforgettable. Yarravale Gorge Road cuts through the Flinders Ranges like a shortcut that only the locals know about, and then head north from there. You won't be too stuck for fuel as long as you plan for it. Another thing to know is that fuel isn't always available in the Outback. We've stretched ourselves from Innerminka to Lyndhurst only to discover that they only had diesel. We had to squeeze every last drop to make ourselves to Lee Creek. Carrying a fuel bladder is not a bad idea to keep yourselves out of trouble. Every man and his dog will tell you that you need a smaller adventure bike. The thing is though, that isn't always better, particularly places like the Flinders Ranges. Smaller bikes are easier when things get hairy, but the rest of the time the bigger bike is far easier and less tiring to ride when the roads open up. And these roads are very open. If you're planning to tackle places like Skytrek, then yeah, go a 500 or a 700 max. But if you're exploring everywhere else, a good size multi-cylinder will be a far nicer experience. However, tyres are a good consideration. A set of 70/30s off-road tyres will help you through the sandy or road or mud. 80/20 is even better. Chunky is good. The cost of fresh tyres and a little bit of road noise is a worthy compensation for confidence in the sand and the riverbeds.
Just feels more secure.
You want to set your preload based on your luggage, but also err a little to the softer side to allow for the corrugations and the extra movement in the sand. Pack light, every kilo extra wants to break your subframe, so keep things nice and easy. This really is just typical and logical stuff. Your foam will only get you so far, and while you'll find some service in some pretty crazy spots, you wouldn't want to be relying on it. A PLB or a messenger like InReach is what you want when something unexpected happens, and the great thing about a messenger is that you can communicate in non-life-threatening situations. You don't want an embarrassingly large set of emergency services heading your way if it's just a breakdown or you've run out of fuel. The great thing about adventure riding is getting out there and supporting the local communities like Hawker. So buy a beer for their sake and you'll get some great advice and conversations in return. Make sure you take note of the closed roads. It's not just for your own safety. Help keeps the roads in good condition for the next people coming through. And make sure you respect the land, traditional and working. Many of these roads and tracks are used for working farms and stations. Leave the gates how you found them. Go to MotoRides.com.au and there you'll find a bunch of tours that are heading to the Flinders Ranges soon. If you have any other great tips, then share them in the comments. The Flinders Ranges is one of the great Aussie adventure rides. Remote, rough and ridiculously good. The Flinders doesn't just hand it to you easily, but it gives you one hell of a story on your return. So if it's not already on your list, it should be.